Say, kids, what time is it?
It's kind of like watching TV, but, in your car.
Dark Side of the Stream. Jay Stevens, Mike the Intern.
I'm a little bummed there's no Moody Cat today.
We're Joe-less, but we don't want to get into the Grumpy Cat situation. He'll be back soon, I promise. Today on Dark Side of the Stream, I felt like we needed to expand Jay Stevens' tastes. So we made him watch a documentary about the band. Were you familiar with this band before you watched this?
I hadn't heard of them.
You'd heard of them.
The guitar player, Robbie Robertson, I've heard of him, who seems like a pretty cool cat, by the way, to me, in my book.
You think he's a pretty cool dude?
As far as the music goes, not really my jam.
Not really jamming to the band, huh?
Because literally it's like just jams.
It's like, it's Americana. It's proto-Americana.
Is that what it's called?
Oh, yeah.
It's like folk rock stuff.
Bringing in like early R&B rock and country Americana. That's exactly what they were.
I wasn't digging it.
I mean, they were so good when they were originally hired as Dylan's band. Like, he saw them and was like, I have to have those guys because he wanted to move to electric.
Eric Clapton wanted to join the band.
Eric Clapton wanted to leave.
And they told him no.
And they were like, dude, it's not really. He just wanted to be a member because he saw what was going on with the camaraderie between these guys. They lived together. And Clapton at this point was a superstar. He wanted to get back to those early days of just kind of the camaraderie with a group of guys making music. That's what he wanted.
Says, can we just jam? And they go, we don't jam. We just write songs and play songs.
Which is true. Which is what they did. This documentary, Once We Were Brothers, is what we're talking about. And I believe it's on Hulu. I am a big fan of the band, especially their first two albums. And of course, The Last Waltz. But this documentary, make no mistake, was one man's version of what happened in this group.
Robbie
Robertson's van.
And it seemed like he was like the leader, the main cat, right?
And the title it kind of says that, Once We Were Brothers, Robbie Robertson and the band. So Scorsese and Robertson are buds. And Scorsese does this. This isn't just the first time he takes someone's vision of what this was and then that's the story.
Runs with it.
And not to discredit Robbie Robertson, he was the principal songwriter for the band, especially in the later years.
Seemed like he had the drive too.
Yeah. And it's
which that happens in every band. Even though you start as a band, usually, like they say in that documentary, usually one member kind of becomes the star or becomes like the main cat, and it's just how it goes.
Yeah, and we'll get into why he had to push it next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Right place, right time. That is a great way to put it.
Right place, right time. That's where we are right now.
Right now, yeah.
Even though Joe's not here.
Even though Joe's not in the right place.
I hope that he listens to these.
I think he does.
Just scathes at work.
He's so mad and he comes in here and beats us up. So, Dark Side of the Stream today discussing Once We Were Brothers by the band. Now, we were talking about the fact that this was definitely Robbie Robertson's version of what happened. Even Garth Hudson, still alive, had no part in it.
Yeah, I saw that at the end. That dude was still alive. A lot of them were dead.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a disconnect in the 80s because, Robbie wanted to just move on. He was like, I'm tired of pulling this thing. I want to get into doing solo stuff.
Guys got into drugs, and this is a classic.
Several of them did.
Classic lesson. Be careful, because some of the guys got into drugs, and he says they completely changed their personalities.
Yeah, there was no drive there, and I think he just wanted to get away from it because Robbie wasn't really into that thing. And then later on in the 80s, the band got back together without Robbie and went and toured and played shows with the Dead, more specifically, up until Richard passed. So it's just it's a good story. Because you get some insight into where they were in Canada with the Hawks and all that stuff, and how they were playing the circuit and how tight they were, and then the whole Woodstock, New York thing, how they bought the house and were just like, what, screw it, let's just put a tape machine down here.
They boxed up in a house, record a record, and then they didn't go out and play on that record, and they became huge, right? And then they recorded another record. I'm like, that's the complete opposite of what I want to do. I want to go out there and meet women.
And that was kind of a foresight too of what was going to happen. They make their first record, Music from Big Pink, and then
and everybody's like, who are these guys? And then they don't even go play live.
And one of the members in a drunk driving accident almost kills himself and has to basically be in traction for his neck for a year.
That dude had several accidents.
It wasn't just the only time.
Mr. Party.
Yeah, and if
crashing cars left and right, dude.
If you ever get a guy that looks at you and says, "No, I'm better when I'm drunk driving,"
I drive. I sober up when I'm behind the wheel.
Right out of their hands and say, "No, sir, you are not," because it could cost your band a whole year's worth of touring, and that's exactly what happened with the band. And, again, I think what you said in the last break, Eric Clapton just wanted to be a member of this band.
That's the crazy part.
You know that, like, as a member and as a musician and a band member, I'm sure you and I both looked at bands that we've seen, and you held Machine Gun Symphony.
Yeah.
You were like, I need to be in that band,
like that,
and now you're in that band.
This guy, I'm sure enough.
There was a band called Muzzle. The same thing happened, and that was one of my favorite bands ever. I played with those guys when I was in another band or something, or did something else, and I was watching them, and I was like, this is the band I want to be in. And then eventually one of the guys left, and I was like, they asked me to replace for a show, and I said, no, I'm in. It's either I'm in or I'm not.
Oh, nice.
So
good power play, Mike. Good power play.
Yeah, I wanted to be in that band. And then we went on to play for another 4.5 years. So it happens. And when you see camaraderie like this, you want it. And that's exactly what was happening with the band. We'll get to more Once We Were Brothers with the band, Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Once We Were Brothers, the documentary about the band, is the discussion of our Dark Side of the Stream today. So, just like you and not really knowing a whole lot about folk music and Bob Dylan specifically.
Off my wheelhouse.
Off your wheelhouse. Not enough hair, not enough flash. The band kind of felt the same way when Dylan asked them to join. They were like, yeah, we knew who he was. He's a folk guy, but we were doing a whole nother thing at the time. And then they go on tour with him, and this was the famous Electric Tour where they literally first show would be Dylan out with an acoustic, and he'd come back out with the band, and they would get booed everywhere they went.
Terrible.
Everywhere they went. And then it goes on later on that, then they go their separate ways. They kept working together. And there was a really cool part of that documentary where Robbie's talking about playing Dylan The Weight for the first time and plays in the song.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden
says,
Dylan's like,
that?
Who wrote that?
Yeah.
And he goes, I did. He goes, you did? Yeah. And that's good. That makes you feel good,
especially
when you got one of these guys saying, "Man, this is incredible."
Dog, right.
Eric Clapton wants you to join your band. You've figured out something, at least for a very specific window of what you're doing, and it was cool to see. Despite his my thoughts on David Geffen, he was able to pull off, signing those guys and then getting Dylan signed and then getting them back together later on so they could go back out on a tour and really get the warm welcome they deserved. Yeah. It was tough to, see what Richard went through as far as his dependency issues and all that stuff, especially Levon, who, man, what a great drummer, what a great voice.
Well, and that dude at one point, I'm going to quit the band. I'm going to go work on an oil rig.
When they're with Dylan.
Yeah.
While they're with Dylan.
I'm going to quit. I'm going to go work on an oil rig.
Yeah.
What
they say my
doing,
thing.
Man?
Yeah. While they're with Dylan.
Top of the world. And
this is what they were going for, but he didn't want it. He was like this. I mean, I'm seeing this lifestyle. I'm stuck in hotel everywhere. And he, one day goes, Robin's like, that's ain't for me. I don't want to do it. Yeah. He's an Arkansas boy. Didn't want to have any part of it, which, it is what it is. We will get to part 4 in our conclusion and what we'll be watching next for the Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Jay Stevens, Mike the Intern, back in the studio discussing Dark Side of the Stream and more specifically Once We Were Brothers from the band.
The exciting conclusion.
So did you learn anything about this?
I did. I learned that, once again...
Not a big fan of the
drugs,
band.
Once again, not a big fan of the band. Drugs can definitely screw up a good thing, which has happened. I mean, that's just repeated through history.
So many stories of bands that we've ended up with that.
And also just pretty much about the drive of Robbie Robertson just to push and make
things happen. And they said it
good.
early on.
I liked him. I thought he came across really nice. And I love how Geffen made him move out to Malibu, and he's like, "What was I doing in here? Here I'm living on the beach now. It's falling, man."
That Shangri-La Studios, Dylan actually at one point they didn't talk about it in this documentary. It was in another one because Rick Rubin now owns that. It's a house with a studio in there, and then there's actually a bus on the property where you could do live recordings from as well.
Wow, man.
It's like an old converted bus. This place is unbelievable. And then at one point in the 70s, when Dylan was wearing that giant hat thing, he went and set up a teepee on the property, and that's where he lived.
There you go.
In a teepee.
Rock and roll teepee.
But yeah, that Malibu location was incredible, and still is. Ruben still records in that place to this day. I believe that's where Wildflowers were recorded with Petty. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff that was recorded in those studios. So yeah, I agree. Drugs are bad. The band is great if you're into that sort of thing. I particularly am. I think at least music from Big Pink and the Brown album are masterpieces, and some of those songs are just so good. The way they could harmonize with each other. I mean, at one other point in the documentary, someone made the comment, you could take a band with one of these vocalists and
they
have
could
a
be
great
a lead
band.
singer, right?
This band had three of them.
Yeah.
Then they all worked together. Almost a proto-Eagles, if
One
you will.
question I do have that I saw a little bit there, but I figure you have the answer. So they get together and they do that big jam, the last waltz, right? And they shoot a movie about it, and it's got everybody shows up to this party, right? And everybody gets up on stage. Why? What's the Alice's Restaurant, and why do you play it on Thanksgiving here on the Cave?
The Alice that has nothing to do with it.
Here we go.
We usually play the.
I thought this was the same thing.
No. Alice's Restaurant is by Arlo Guthrie. And it's a song, and I think
Arlo Guthrie, but he was at this thing, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, I'm not too far off base, and it's the same kind of music, right?
Yeah.
Folk Americana,
folk Americana folk, yes.
It's like I'm stereotyping, like people say all rap sounds the same. I'm stereotyping folk Americana, it all sounds the same.
Yeah. And there were so many different people at the last waltz. I mean, they had made friends with everybody. I mean,
so what is the Alice's Restaurant
on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, and why is that on Thanksgiving?
It's basically that the whole idea of this song, and at least part one of it, happened on Thanksgiving Day. Same thing with the last waltz. It was performed on Thanksgiving Day. Like they came out and served everyone meal, and then they came out and played.
All right.
That's same thing with Arlo Guthrie. It's the Alice's Restaurant. The events took place on Thanksgiving. So
all right. Well, so you go.
Technically is where
I learned something. Hopefully you learned something as well.
Yeah, and that's why on Thanksgiving we play that, and we play the last waltz because it's a Thanksgiving tradition.
There we go. Now we know. Worked here for 7
Dark
years.
Side of the Stream. If you're a big fan of the band, check out Once We Were Brothers. But just understand that it's one man's version. There are 4 other guys in that band.
Well, it's like they say, there's 3 versions of every story.
Exactly.
Yours, mine, and the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. So. It's your turn.
Is it my turn? Gosh, I'm going to have to go throwback dark on us, guys.
Golly.
And I made you watch this, and everyone else that I made watch this texted me the same thing. What the hell are you making me watch? So you at home can watch this as well next week with us. Abducted in Plain Sight on Netflix.
Oh, we're going to watch that again?
Abducted in Plain Sight.
Why don't we watch the new murder one?
I did, but Abducted in Plain Sight because people at home need to watch that. If you have not watched Abducted in Plain Sight, woo! That's your Netflix and chill this weekend.
Oh, my goodness
Right,
gracious.
Mike? I made Mike watch it.
I'm still honestly trying to get him back for that. And there are so many times that I'll
so he's trying to get me back for it, so you need to do the same.
Yeah.
Abducted in Plain Sight, it's on Netflix. We'll meet back here next Thursday. Watch it this weekend. It will blow your mind. It's another amazing tale.
Good luck, and do not watch it with your children.